Hello, my name is Caleb. On just about every social media, I go by Caleb the Spy, and I've gotten in the habit of producing or putting out posts that kind of cover music anniversaries. Everything from old CCM albums to newer albums to old, classic albums. And it's been super fun. But what I've noticed, I usually start on Twitter, now called X, and there's just not always enough space to get all my thoughts out and still make it tenable because I have to set them all up. And if you're setting up tweets ahead of time, you can't do multiple tweets. I don't know if that's to prevent people from spamming, but it is what it is. So I thought I would start this little show where I just on Fridays or Saturdays, I'm going to try and recap the week, just some additional thoughts on some of the albums that I posted about throughout the week. I thought it'd be a fun way to. I'm starting to try and get into this podcast thing. It's just stretching my wings into it, and I thought this might be a good way to do it. Just upload it to YouTube. Eventually, I might try and do it live, but I'm not quite there yet. So yeah, this is what I'm starting with. So I'm just going to go through some of the albums that I posted this week, just my thoughts on them, expand a little, just see if I can add to what I posted this week. So here we go. This is my first attempt at this. Be critical. Don't be gentle. Tell me what's stupid. I can take it. So, for reference, I'm covering albums that I celebrated or posted about between October 7th and today, when I'm recording this, October 13th. So, I'm going to go through, I'm not going to go day by day. Instead, I'm going to kind of go from what is most important to me or kind of ones I'm most excited to talk about to or actually the flip of that. I'm going to start with ones that, are just kind of were interesting. I have a section where I want to talk about things that were kind of surprising to me that maybe I just didn't expect to hit me a certain way. And then I want to end with kind of my favorites of the group. So the first one I want to talk about this was the Talking Heads released "Remain in Light" or "Remain in the Light." That was released in 1980. "Remain in Light," 1980. I love this album. I love the Talking Heads. I think they're super unique, very interesting group, and just real frankly, "Once in a Lifetime" is on that album, and if that's not one of the greatest pop songs to ever be written and performed, I don't know what is. It's so good. It's interesting. It's dynamic. I just was really excited to celebrate that album, and I was so thankful. It was about 6 years ago that I really started getting into kind of new wave post punk stuff from the '80s, and I'm really glad I did. I'm really glad I got to kind of dive deep into some of that. I've gone back, and I think I own a lot of those early Talking Heads albums. I don't know if I own them all, but that is one that I still love to play to this day. Blasted that in the kitchen while I was working on some other things. So that was one that I wanted to talk about. Another one was, oh man, I'm gonna say this totally wrong. Ska Funk Rasta Punk by Skank and Pickle. I talked about that one. The date is really hard to pin down on that one. I don't know if I can tell you when it actually was released. In fact, I know I can't. So it was just one of those ones that I posted about. It was released in 1991. I love Skank and Pickle. I still love what Mike Park does. They are a unique group. They're weird. They're fun. It's not my favorite Skank and Pickle album, but it was really, really exciting to just go back and listen to that one. And as I was listening to it, I just realized, yeah, how much I absolutely love that that album and how fun it is to listen to. So anytime, any good excuse to throw on Skank and Pickle, I'm all for it. Tragic Kingdom by No Doubt came out in 1995. When I posted about it, I mentioned that it's kind of a guilty pleasure album, and I don't know why that is. I wonder if it was just the super pop crossover it became. If there's a little bit of embarrassment there to admit that I was such a fan of a pop album. I will say on a re-listen, it's 4 songs too long. It is 14 tracks, and almost an hour, I think. It's a long album. I think if they trim that thing down a little, it's even more strong. But that was an album that was uh fun to re-listen, and it's always fun to revisit. You know, they have the ska roots, and for anybody who knows me knows I have a strong affection for the ska music. So another one that came out or that we talked about this week that I posted about was Elvis Costello's. He had two that kind of were on the same day, which is always very interesting to me. It was his Look Now album from 2018, and then Live at El Macumbo. I am sure I said that wrong. And that is one of my favorite little jewels. I really love that album. It was recorded back in the 80s, probably early 80s, but it was actually released in 1993. And you can just hear his angst. You can hear his anger and his just at times you feel like you can hear just their drunken rip through those songs. And it's just such a fun listen. Some of those versions are just you can see his punk influence. You can see where he he kind of got labeled in with a lot of the punk crowd, and I think I can totally understand why. So that's a really I just love putting that album on and just kind of just letting it fly and feeling a little angry at times, but it's a real great album to just kind of fly through and to be able to take in. So I was really excited to re-listen to that one and kind of take that one in. One other one that I think is worth mentioning is the Ska Lives compilation that got put out in I want to say 2010, 2011. It was put out by Indie Vision Music, and it's just such an absolutely great collection. I'll be honest, there was a time that 2000s to 2010 where there just weren't a lot of ska albums coming out. I was definitely getting into other things, and that album, along with kind of Five Iron Frenzy's return, really was like kind of jump started new ska revival in me and just really being excited about it because all of a sudden there was new stuff to listen to. I know there had been stuff out there, but it had gotten hard to find. So I'm really thankful for that little compilation. I think it's a great collection of songs. It's super fun to listen to. So I'm really thankful for that. It's really yeah, I think that's the way to put it. Is just thankful that it came out, and I've gone back and bought and scrounged and tried to find a lot of those bands because of that. I think it was a great decision for some of those bands to be on there. Hopefully, it bought them more than just my sales, but really just a well put together collection. Really thankful for that one, and glad that was put together. The next couple things I want to talk about, next two albums I want to talk about, were albums that they're not on. I still have a whole bunch, a number of albums that are kind of on my favorite list albums. I made a list of albums that was kind of my 150 favorite albums list. It started as 10, and I just couldn't keep it to 10, and all of a sudden I couldn't keep it to 20, and all of a sudden I was at 100, and eventually ended up at about 150. So these next two albums are not albums that were on there, but just stuff that stuck out to me this week. One of them was a bit of a surprise, and just the other one was another one that just stuck out. So, first one I wanted to talk about was Phil Keaggy and the Sunday's Child. Phil Keaggy and Sunday's Child. I've never listened to this. I don't know how it made it onto my calendar. I get a lot of recommendations from people. It might have been from I've gone through a couple people's favorite albums list. So I don't know how it ended up there. Some of my note taking when I started compiling this list is not as good as it should be. But I really enjoyed listening to it. It was a really fun listen. I don't know if I could tell you what stood out. I was listening to it while listening to it while I was at work, but I was totally digging it. I was totally jamming to it. So yeah, it was a really fun listen. It was released in 1988. It is available on his Bandcamp page. For right now, it's available for pay what you want. So if you want to check it out and throw them a couple bucks, you can. Otherwise, you can download it for free. I'm sure it's on all the streaming sites. I know I streamed it when I listened to it, but just a really fun listen. There's a couple moments where it puts into it ends up sounding a little like that 80s rock that sometimes loses me personally. But somebody described it as Beatles-esque at times, and that really did stand out to me. Good call on that. And yeah, it was a really interesting listen. So that was a good one that I really kind of just stuck out. I wasn't kind of expecting it. The other one that stood out, not that it wasn't expected, but was Burlap to Cashmere. Anybody out there? Released in 1998. It was released on October 13th, 1998. And so posted about that album and re-listened to it this morning. And it is just such a fun listen. There's not a dull moment on it. It's very, somebody responded that there's a kinetic energy to it. A number of people commented about how it's just kind of almost a surprise that they were not a bigger act, which I absolutely can. Yeah, I totally get that. It was just a great album. There's not a bad song on it. Really enjoyable to listen to, and just a super dynamic album. So yeah, that was one that really stood out, and I was really excited to listen to it and just kind of dive into that one today. So those are kind of two albums that are not on kind of my all-time favorite list, but really stuck out to me this week as I was listening to music and taking some of these albums in throughout the week. Four more albums that I just wanted to talk about. First one is So Much for the Afterglow. It was released October 7th, 1997. It is on my favorite 150 albums list. Comes in at number 123. When this album came out, so I was a freshman in college when this came out. So to kind of date myself, and I was obsessed with this album. It just had this raw kind of alt rock pop punk grunge feel. It just sort of all melded together perfectly. I think this is their best album. Maybe it's their most accessible album is a better way of putting it, but this album genuinely was one of those ones that just really stood out to me. I still can listen to it. Everything from, everything to everyone, Father of Mine, One Hit Wonder to even some of the, it had like five or six singles, but even like a California King, that last song, I love that song. It's just got such a great sound to it. There kind of was a cohesive voice. I do think, I wonder if Art ran out of things to say later in their career. It feels like a lot of the themes that are on this album just come back over and over and over again. But there are just there's not a bad song on this album. On track 8, it's a fun instrumental that just kind of comes out of nowhere that is just, it's not this quiet moment, it's this kind of heavier moment in some ways. Right after the song, right after it goes, I will buy you a new life, Father of Mine, One Hit Wonder, and into this instrumental, and then follows up that with the song Amphetamine. It's just a great run right in the middle of the album, which I don't feel like you see that often. Most albums are either kind of front loaded or back loaded. But I loved it. I love this album. It's not a band that stuck with me. I have their first three albums, I think I have them all on CD, but this one is the one that stands out. This is their finest work, in my opinion. I can still put this on and listen to it and just totally dig it. Next, I want to talk about Loud and Clear by the Orange County Supertones, the sometimes maligned Orange County Supertones. That's what they were still calling themselves. I think eventually they dropped the OC and they just went by Supertones, but this one still says the OC Supertones. This was released October 10th, 2000. This is my favorite Supertones album. Chase the Sun and Supertones Strike Back are also up there for me. And actually, their last album before the breakup not the one that they did when they did the Kickstarter to Return, but that last one I also enjoy. But this is my favorite. I think it's just their most solid overall album. It's got some real dynamic moments on it. I think Wilderness is their best song. It is a song that still moves me, especially somebody who at times struggles with doubt and is kind of actually okay with the idea of doubt. And it really, really is just a solid track. I really appreciate that album. It still gets me emotional. And there's just so many really great songs on this album. It starts with Escape for a Reason, which is just a really solid track. What It Comes To is good. Jury Duty is a absolute uh absolute great song. Return of the Revolution, another one just great. And then it goes into Wilderness. The second half is probably not quite as strong, but there's not really a really bad song. Who Could It Be doesn't do much for me. I know somebody commented that they really like that one, but Forward to the Future, Another Show is another one. There's those two songs, just okay. Forward to the Future, 2020, Spend It With You, just are all really good songs. Really, really solid. Father's World is great. Again, I think this is just their most cohesive album. It's their most well refined. Maybe it's not as ska as some people would want. I'm not worried about that. I don't want to get into that game. I just really dig this album. It probably the lyrical content, which I know was a turnoff for some people, but for me, this one really, really hits it. And so, almost for Wilderness alone, that's how much I like that song. So, Loud and Clear by the OC Supertones, just other things I wanted to mention about that one as well. And again, I was on my 150 favorite albums list. It was number 92. I think it's the only Supertones album to crack the top 100. I think I'd have to look at my list again, but number 92 on my list. Next, let's talk about In Rainbows by Radiohead. That album was released October 10th, 2007. This is another one. This is my favorite Radiohead album. It is number 39 on my favorite albums list, and I I I I know OK Computer is probably more accessible. The Benz is even more accessible. But this album it feels a little magical. There's a great video by the Middle Eight on YouTube. If you want to, he talks about this album and how it kind of came to be, and then just a really, really interesting just their release cycle on this because they released it for free. You can go. It was a pay what you want. This album just for me is just it's my favorite. There's not a bad song on it. There's a couple that are just absolutely beautiful. Reckoner is arguably my favorite Radiohead song. There's a personal reason. I have a personal reason that that song really means a lot to me, but that one is just a great song, and there's just a lot of beautiful moments on this record. Great album cover too, in my opinion. But it was one I wanted to mention. Number 39 for me on my favorite albums list. It's one I hope to get on vinyl at some point. Just would love to be able to have it and play it loud. I don't need a ton of Radiohead albums. I have them all on CD. I don't know if I need a ton of them on vinyl, but this is definitely one of the ones I'm trying to find. It's a good length too. Some of the Radiohead albums I think get a little long, but 10 tracks, 42 minutes. This is just a beautiful album, and it was super fun to listen to while I was working this week. All right, the last album from this week that I wanted to just talk about real quick was The Lean Years Tradition by Model Engine, formerly known as Black Eyed Siva, released October 7th, 1997. This comes in number 10 on my favorite albums list. I really love this album again. 1997. This comes out when I'm a freshman in college. There's no bad songs on this album. It is almost I would say it's a perfect alt rock album. Hang You Upside Down is a great opener. It just drives through. Jeremy Post is a genius. He absolutely, his lyrics just are incredibly touching. They're well thought out. The guitar playing is interesting. The whole band is great in my opinion. Anonymous F is one of those songs that just touches on a super sensitive issue in a very unique and interesting way. It's a very feels like a very personal song, a very exposed song. Maybe it's not, but I think it's just a really, really interesting way to broach that subject and to talk about it. I'm gonna mess up the song titles because I don't say these out loud very much because I don't get to talk about them very much. But Weather Vanes is a great song. Walking Wounded is excellent. It just absolutely great. And then what a closing track, I think there's just the way this album rounds out again, start to finish, there's just not a bad moment on this album. There's very little wrong with this album in my opinion, and it is an absolute great listen. Not on streaming. I think it can be a little tricky to find. Let's see what it is costing you these days if you want to buy the CD. If you want to buy the CD on Amazon, it's costing you almost $40. That is that is a travesty. I would love to see Model Engine and Black Eyed Siva's music on streaming just to be able to tell people to go check them out because oh man, I am so thankful that I still have those CDs and just great music. So yeah, that's the week in music for me. Just kind of recapping some of those album anniversaries that I post. I like posting those so that I have an excuse to go back and listen to albums. I have a lot of albums. I switched over to a lot of digital stuff in the 2000s, and I still have a lot of digital stuff. In general, because I like to buy music, I will try and find the cheapest way to do it. I don't really use a streaming service. I will sometimes. The new Menzingers album came out today. I wanted to listen to it. I wasn't quite ready to buy it. I probably will. I'm thinking about the vinyl. I'm thinking about how I'm going to buy it. So I did stream that one a couple times just to kind of dive into it. I enjoyed it. It was it's an interesting listen, a little different, but that's why I like doing these album anniversaries. It's just a good reminder to go back and check something out. And there's days where I'm not necessarily in the mood for the things I'm talking about, or I just can't. So that is what it is. But yeah, it's always a good excuse, in my opinion, to put on an album you maybe haven't listened to in a little bit and dive back into it. So yeah, there's some of the albums I wanted to talk about. Again, I'm just trying to figure this out. I'm going to upload this onto YouTube, see if it works. I have no idea if this will how this will work and anything like that. So thanks for bearing with me. If you listen to any of this, I appreciate it. If you listen to all of it, I really appreciate you. Okay, that's it. I'm Caleb, known as Caleb the Spy on Twitter, Caleb the Spy on Instagram, Caleb the Spy. I'm also on Facebook, and yeah, just trying to stretch my wings a little and figure out if this chickadee can do these sort of audiovisual stuff. So thanks so much, and see if I can do this every week. Thanks.